Hey and welcome. I'm Dale from Journaling Online, and Vampira is from Wakeman Nutrition. So Vampira is really Mel Wakeman, our trusted, although how one trusts a woman dressed up as a vampire, our trusted nutritionist. She's probably going to talk to us a little bit about bloodletting and blood sucking and things like that today. And the reason that she's dressed up is because we're talking about energy vampires, and it is Halloween. And actually, if you're watching this later and it's not Halloween, just disregard all the silliness. So let's talk about energy. I'm going to take you back to January 2018, and this is a time that my spine fractured and I was in a lot of pain. Now, in the lead up to that, I've been a vegetarian most of my life, and then I decided that I would become vegan. And I actually struggled changing some of the things that I was eating. And my energy was quite low, and I couldn't work out why. I just thought it was just kind of like a transition phase. I'd previously had shingles. I'd been left with post-herpetic neuralgia in my back, and when my spine fractured, it was all around the area that I have this neuralgia. So there was all kinds of stuff going on. So spine fractured. It took me about 6 months to be able to walk properly again. What happened in terms of my diet and my energy was I was completely and utterly wiped out. I have never felt so disgustingly dreadful in all my life. It was genuinely, it was awful. So beside the spinal fractures, I had high prolactin, which had caused low dopamine. I had low estrogen, which also means low serotonin, and you'll know all the other things that were going on. It just was quite an awful time. But what happened at the point of fracture was that, so I was a vegan. I decided to go back to being a vegetarian. I just thought I need to get that kind of extra calcium and all those other calories and things in my diet. I was quite thin as well, so I needed to get all that stuff back into my diet. But because of the massive amounts of pain, I couldn't sleep. So, I mean, the doctor gave me, I can't remember what drugs he gave me. He gave me some drugs. I took them for 4 days. I remember just lying looking at the ceiling with all this druggy stuff, you know, that kind of, they kind of numb your system. So I spent like 4 days just staring at the ceiling thinking, this is really not working for me. So I chucked the drugs away, and I decided to use energy medicine, breathing techniques and stuff like that to try and help me to sleep. It actually was difficult. And I also had to sleep. I had a pillow under my knees, under my legs, and I had to sleep in a straight line, and trying to get out of bed and to try and slip my legs over and then try and get my body out. And you just imagine there's all this pain going on. So there's all this stuff going on that's really smacking me. In terms of my diet, the strangest thing happened. So I went back vegetarian. That was great. And then I had this mad craving for meat. And I remember talking to people saying, do you know what? I used to love having what they called meat, meatballs in this sauce. And I loved sausage and mash and this. And when I had coq au vin and when I had this, and I remember I spent 2 weeks just talking about meat. And what I didn't realize was my B12 was low because of the way my diet had been. So that, there was a whole lot of stuff going on, and because I was having blood tests, I was able to see why my energy, as well as all the physical things, why my energy was so low. So I decided to eat meat again, and actually I saw a massive increase in my energy. But it was horrible. And I've only really been eating meat for a short period of time. But what has happened recently is I'm making meat dishes, and then I'm moving the meat to one side. I'm eating all the vegetables, and then I'm giving all the meat to my dogs. And what I noticed was my energy was plummeting. Blood tests showed that my B12 was low. You'll be able to obviously explain to people what that means. So I started using these little patches that put the B12 directly into your bloodstream. B12's going up, my energy's going up. So what I notice is if I don't look after me and I don't eat a good diet, if I don't walk the dogs, if I don't go to bed at a good time, all of that stuff, my energy is just completely and utterly wrecked, completely wrecked. You know, like if a dog is ill and I get up in the middle of the night, which happened, you know, just recently, the next day, I mean, I just was like, oh, I can't speak. You know, I probably look like one of the ghouls running around on Halloween day. You know, it really does completely take it out of me. So what I'm going to do now, so that is just super potted history in terms of you know, changing your diet and being able to be, you know, and actually through journaling, I was able to monitor how much sleep I was getting and stuff like that. I actually kept a really, really good record. So if I hand over to Mel, talk us through kind of my case study, but also what other people can look out for and why they need to create the right diet and get the right sleep, etc.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I've left my teeth out because I can't speak with the teeth in, and I apologise if I rustle a bit. It's the nature of nylon, I think. But right, so for you, Dale, you had a number of things going on that had a direct link and correlation to your energy levels. So pain. We wholeheartedly underestimate how draining pain is in terms of having to deal with it, and actually what your body is doing underneath,
right,
in terms of trying to heal, protect the body. And our natural response is, you know, trigger a pain response. There's loads of stuff going on, and it can be absolutely exhausting to even sort of mentally as well as physically cope with that pain. Sleep, lack of sleep, absolutely fundamental. It's really interesting how many of us, you know, I meet many people who are struggling with tiredness, whether it's chronic fatigue, which is an area that I work in, or just sort of this tired all the time. And often those people don't know where to begin. And often there is a direct sort of focus in terms of, oh, it must be the food. Let's sort out what it is that I'm eating. There's a focus on diet. And then we kind of forget sleep and the kind of stress management, and like you say, walking outside, getting fresh air, the things that actually can also lift our mood and lift our energy levels indirectly. And even though for me, obviously nutrition is core to everything that I do, and like we've talked about, you know, in our 28 days before, you know, these pillars of health, when I think about nutrition, actually for me personally, sleep is more important. And if I can get my sleep right, then the other things kind of fall into place. In other words, if I get my sleep right, I'm a little bit more focused and my motivation is better. So therefore I make better food choices. And so things kind of slot into place. And then obviously it's your diet. So we know with both vegetarian and vegan diets that tiredness, fatigue can be very common, because the issue is that when you follow a vegetarian, and particularly when you follow a vegan diet, your diet is more likely to be more restricted, more limited. It's more likely that you won't have enough of not only, you know, the vitamins and minerals that you need, so in terms of your B12, but also things like your healthy fats and maybe some of sort of the protein type foods, which again give your body the building blocks to make the right feel good hormones and that sort of thing. So you mentioned vitamin B12, and what we need vitamin B12 for basically is to help us make red blood cells. And the job of those red blood cells is to carry oxygen around the body and deliver it to our cells so that our cells can use that oxygen and basically turn it into usable energy. And inside those red blood cells is also iron. And when we go vegetarian and onto vegan diets, when we are omitting meat from our diets, then yes, there are foods that are rich in iron in terms of vegetables and plant-based sources, but it's not readily available. So when we're missing particularly both iron and vitamin B12, we physically don't have the capacity to fuel our body cells properly. We end up feeling tired. I mean, there are different causes of B12 deficiency. You know, there's what we call pernicious anemia, and it's linked to having a problem with absorbing B12. But when you're omitting animal sources of food, then if you're not getting enough B12 from your diet, then what happens is the blood cells get really big and they just don't really work very well. So we don't have an effective functioning red blood cell. They still kind of do their work, but they're not good at hanging on to loads of oxygen and taking it around our body as we should do. So yeah, go on, you're thinking.
No, it's what's striking me is, you know, it's really important that people find the diet that's right for them. So if they want to be a vegetarian, if they want to be a vegan, if they want to be a pescatarian or eat meat or whatever it is, people need to make the right choices for them. But what I've learned, and I can't understand why these things didn't really filter in, I guess, you know, probably the busyness of life, is you really need to look at what does my body need to function. And then, so if you're going to be a vegan, it's to say, right, well, what's normally not in my diet? And I know we're going to talk about supplementation in another video. But it's like, what's missing in my diet? And how do I make that up so that my vegan diet, or whatever diet you're having, gives me everything I need? I honestly, you know, I've studied nutrition for years, and I just can't believe that certain things didn't strike me. It just didn't.
But hindsight's a great thing.
It is.
And actually, for many, many people, we invest a lot of our time and energy and efforts and research into all of the things that we do in our life, the important stuff. But when it comes to our own health, for whatever reason, whether it's not really knowing where to begin, where to look, and that's in terms of where to look for information, but where to look in yourself and find those cues and signals, and also how to kind of put together your own plan to do it. And when we look at vegetarianism and veganism, how it's become incredibly popular. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of having a more plant-based rich diet. I'm kind of like you at the moment, and I know I'm a meat eater and my husband loves it, but it is always the last thing I eat on my plate, and quite often I leave it. And I'm that close at the moment, not because it's, you know, a sort of a vegetable month next month for November, but I'm that close going vegetarian because it just doesn't make me feel good. So I know that, you know, you can have a really healthy vegetarian or vegan diet. They're quite challenging because of the consequences that are going to arise because you are omitting certain food groups. And I don't believe it's something that you can just jump into, because there's an element of preparation and planning, because you've got to think about the foods that you like and enjoy, and actually kind of find out what foods, what nutrients you're going to miss from omitting certain foods. That's where your research comes in. And also be open to how it's going to work with you, affect you. Because I know, there's a number of occasions where I've read, people have and worked with people who have gone vegetarian, decided they felt dreadful on it, and kind of had this craving for meat. And when we look at cravings, a lot of the time it's centered around, say, sugar, or we believe that when we get cravings for certain foods, it's because we're lacking in vitamins and minerals. Now, the science says, no, that doesn't make sense. How can your body crave certain foods? So, no, a little bit in my head goes, is that even possible? I don't know. But this is it. It's very, very personal, isn't it? In terms of how your body reacts and responds to the foods that you eat and when you eat and so on. And the other things that you've got going on in your life. This is where that makes you unique, not in terms of just your own unique DNA metabolism, but your unique life and commitments. That's what's going to, in terms of getting a diet that works for you, it has to encompass everything that you are about.
So it's really interesting. While you were talking about the craving, I know already what I'm going to make for dinner tonight. And this is bizarre. I'm craving lentils. But, you know, comfort food. Yeah. Because, you know, it's colder, and I love, you know, those big soups and big bowls of kind of mushy food, you know, loads of vegetables and beans and stuff like that. And as you were talking, I was going, I know what I'm having tonight. I'm going to have like a big mush with it won't be a mush, but because obviously I like my vegetables al dente. But yeah, just why lentils? Why lentils?
In the winter time, it's quite often that we want those warming, comforting foods. It's like, on the flip side, in the summertime, when our body's working to keep our body cooler, and I know where you live, it gets flipping hot, doesn't it? And when your body's working to be cooler, we often notice that appetite drops because your body's kind of doing other more important things. We do tend to eat less or want lighter foods in the summer. Bring in the winter, it's in part because we'll have that need for something comforting, and whether it is kind of stodge, but like the mushy soft textures are kind of easy to eat as well. And we're almost in the winter going into this sort of kind of hibernation mode. It is kind of real that things kind of slow down. We've got shorter windows of opportunity to do stuff because of limited daylight hours, and our bodies still run by a master biological clock that is dictated by how much sunshine is out there. So it's common that we'll go for easier things, as well as those memories of the previous winters where you've been curled up on the sofa, sat by the fire with your dogs, and it's like, it's nice, isn't it? Of course, you kind of want to recreate that.
And actually, it's quite energizing to eat that kind of food, because for me, I mean, that's what I fancy. I know that when I make it, it's going to be like really yummy, and I love the whole sitting at the table. I mean, sometimes I'll sit on the sofa and guard my bowl with my life because there's 3 or 6 hungry eyes staring at me, all salivating all over the floor. But there's something about the ceremony of it that I find quite energizing. So although I live on my own, I like the chopping everything up and prepping it, and then going to my kitchen table and sitting there, and actually for me it becomes like a whole ritual, a whole ceremony, and that in itself really, it kind of lifts my spirit.
Yeah, because aren't you you're taking charge of looking after your body. You know what foods nourish you, satisfy you, feed your body and your mind. It's all part of that process. And I think when many of us think about cooking dinner, all we kind of think about is the physical process of standing in front of the hob and putting stuff in the pan and cooking. But actually cooking dinner is all that stuff that comes beforehand, which is kind of working out what it is that you'd like to eat. And certainly if you live in a house with multiple mouths, it's like, who's going to like everything? And then you got, make sure you've got the ingredients and chopping and preparation. Making dinner is way more than just to say, stood at the kitchen,
I mean, I've got lentils in my head, and I know when I go to my fridge, I've got lots of lovely fresh vegetables. The whole thing of just opening the door and going, and I am very guided by my intuition. It'll be like, well, what is going to go with those lentils for me? And, as an aside, I always like have something green that's like full of calcium and more than just calcium, but I always have green things. I've got it drilled into me. When you're spine fractures, you really need to eat green. Yeah. So I'll make whatever it is, and I'll have something green on the side, even if it's a bag of rocket, which doesn't quite go with lentils and things, but why not? Why not? But it's, for me, sorry.
I'm just waving my hand.
In a vampire kind of way.
But I was thinking in terms of the lentils and what you're choosing there in terms of the vegetables as well, is they're nice, slow release foods.
Of course.
So that's, in terms of your energy levels, and if you've been awake with your dog for the last few nights, you will be flagging. So in terms of, I'll come on to what we look for in terms of when we might feel tired, but you will intuitively know that when you're tired, you kind of need to fuel your body gently, keep it ticking over, keep the burner going. So those lentils, which are rich in protein, rich in fibre, they're not too, what I'd call very stodgy, very carby, where you're going to get this like crash afterwards. It's just yeah, it's like, it's nourishingly energizing food. And then you've got all your veggies in there to give you all the other, you know, all your B vitamins and zinc and magnesium, all those other little bits that we need to release the energy from the food that you're eating.
You see, this is what's so important about keeping a journal, you know, and in the 28 days journal, we talk to people about monitoring all of those things that I've just talked about. Yeah. And although for me, you know, before I, you know, like we know I'm a big journaler, but before I started working with you and really keeping a track on all the other things that were going on, this kind of stuff, although I might have unconsciously registered it, having it written down and seeing the patterns and the pictures of things really, really drives it home, I
honestly don't think we have the mental capacity to hold all that information of all those different factors coming in. And I know in terms of the last time we ran the 28 days, it was really eye-opening to actually think, oh, I can join the dots together between sleep and how I'm feeling, and linking sort of the mood to energy levels and then the food choices. It does all connect together. And until you can write that down and see the bigger picture, then you're going to miss out on all those cues.
It's been, you know, although I'm running this with you, it's been really, really fascinating, because I've focused on the micro and the macronutrients. I've been focusing on how does my body work. I mean, I must have been like the biggest bore in the world going, let me just open my book on physiology and talk you through how the human body works. Oh, and that's why we need that little tiny nutrient over there. So I've really focused on the micro. Just awful. I mean, I needed to do it to distract my mind while I was healing, but now I need to see. It's like my doctor says, you've done your healing. Now you need balance. He always says to me, balance, and I'm like, don't take me away from my study. But it is about balance.
And it's like, I have a dog here, excuse me.
Is that a vampire dog?
I'm rustling as well. I have a bookshelf full of books. I've lost my hair now as well. I have a bookshelf full of physiology and nutrition books. But our body hasn't read the books. No. And this is where, you know, actually in the last 10, 20 years of my life, I've really realised that even though I know all about this stuff, doesn't mean to say I know what to look for in me. I've had to spend time through this journaling and doing food diaries and going beyond, the micronutrients and the numbers and the data. And when I talk to lots of people about doing a food journal, a food diary, the sort of the common association is, oh yeah, but I log stuff on my FitnessPal. I know what macros I'm having. I know calories, macros, vitamins and minerals. It's like, well, yeah, but how do you feel? So when we think about tiredness, it might be, you know, that struggle to get out of bed in the morning, the falling asleep on the sofa at night, the struggling to get through the day and having to rely on the caffeine and the sugar. But actually, do you notice that, you know, are there particular times in the day when your focus and concentration kind of go out the window? What happens to your mood? Like when I get tired, people generally know I lose my sense of humor.
I do too, and my poor little doggies get it.
Yeah, I get quite impatient. I get snappy. Yeah, and it's not even necessarily a hanger thing, because this isn't. My body's telling me I need to eat. I know when we feel tired, we often get more hungry, because our body is simply craving energy. It's basically saying, you know, if you're not sleeping, if you're not fueling your body with the right things, then keep putting stuff in, because then I'll still be able to function. So we might experience cravings for certain things. I know people often report to me, you know, bread comes up, sweet comes up, stodge comes up, potatoes, nourishing, slow release foods. So being aware of how you feel in terms of mood, sleep, can you concentrate on stuff, how your energy dips and maybe rises throughout the day, but what foods do you then choose? What are your go-tos? And then what happens if you kind of intervene and maybe change some of the foods that are your go-tos? How do they make you feel? So it really is this idea of experimenting with your body. You kind of have a free lab here. And I know it can feel a bit scary using it, but tracking, not in a itty bitty, I need to look at calories and what I'm eating exactly when and how much, but the information that is actually around you, the information that is within you, you can kind of find that.
So what I found interesting about the journal was I didn't write. I mean, there's no way I'm going to weigh a piece of cheese. I'm just going to, cut a bit off. Your dog is so naughty.
Excuse me.
He wants a pumpkin. Everybody, if you haven't met Mel's dog, he's called Joey. I've got 3. They're called Verdi Dog, who's the oldest, Marley Moo, and Angel. So if ever you're watching the videos and a creature comes up and licks either of us, you've now been formally introduced.
Yeah.
So coming back to the journal, I don't write the amounts of anything. I'll just say for breakfast, I've had nuts and seeds, I've had chia, I might have had rice milk or almond milk, or so I'll just write like normal breakfast or egg on toast. Oh, he's being very naughty. But do you know what I've also started to recognize is things that trigger me, that send my emotions one way and my energy right down here. It's like this, I go into this vortex of, I don't get like massively angry, but around a recent full moon, my emotions, my anger was, I remember kind of standing outside of myself and going, who is this woman that is feeling? Yeah, right. But what that did is I was on the floor with my energy, because it was like everything was triggering me. Now, luckily, because I've got the 3 dogs and because I write, I was out. I just walked as often as I could to try and get my feet into to Mother Earth. And certainly after a couple of days of that, I did a massive piece of writing. I just felt that peace, but that honestly during the time my energy was, and the journal helped me to kind of see that there were these trigger things. It's like, woo.
Yeah.
But it gives you a great 360-degree view on, who you are and how everything affects your energy.
And I think looking at that connection between your mood and the food, it's not just looking at, this has come up before in terms of emotional eating, but how you just feel in terms of it's hard to describe, but how positive you feel in your head. I know when I'm tired, my mood drops, but my anxiety climbs, and it's the little tiny things that kind of overwhelm me. And then like a line of dominoes, everything kind of falls, and it just goes, it's just kind of chaos. So for me, the signs are that I'm not handling my stress very well, that I'm feeling more emotional. Anger comes up a lot for me. And the power that this journaling has brought to me is to just dump it, get it out of my head, get this anger out, whatever it is I'm dealing with, so that I can actually create a bit of headspace and think, okay, I can think logically about this now. This stuff I don't need to worry about. It's kind of out there. And then, okay, let's try and start to join the dots together.
It's I think life is such an incredible learning journey. And we owe it to ourselves to look after all parts of us, not just think about diet in isolation or sleep in isolation or our emotions in isolation. Absolutely everything, because we're energetic beings. So if we do all of it, hopefully most of the time we'll have this lovely balanced energy. So have you got any final things, tips, or anything that you want to share with anyone before we wrap up?
I guess it's just it's kind of to round up in terms of looking at tiredness and fatigue. This is a classic time of year that people start to notice it, in terms of the days are getting shorter, the nights are longer, we are losing our exposure to sunshine. So this idea of sort of seasonal affective disorder or SAD, vitamin D comes into play here. But it's often a time of year where our mood can start to dip and we feel like kind of hibernating, hiding under the duvet. So it's allowing yourself to kind of go with the flow to a certain extent and notice these feelings, but lock them down, write them down, and then think about what it is that might be triggering that. Is it your stress levels? Is it your sleep levels? Your sleep quality? Is it your whole sort of your day in terms of you trying to do too much? And then your diet. I imagine if you're feeling tired, you've probably got an idea that your dietary choices are not great.
Peanut butter sandwiches.
So then it's looking at, well, how do you notice what your triggers are, and then how do you put into place alternatives and different things? So this is where the 28 days is perfect, because you get that hand holding, you get to be encouraged and help to see the bigger picture. You're guided in terms of what to look for, what to explore, and we help you join the dots together. So that, for me, in terms of, we'll share some testimonials. We've got some wonderful feedback. It's been incredible what people have noticed and been able to change.
It's been life-changing for me, not only for myself, but watching other people. Just even the tiniest things that they've done has had such a massive effect on them. It's been actually quite humbling. So I will put the links to the 28-day program, and if you've got any questions, then you can contact either Mel or I. And thank you so much for watching and listening and putting up with the silliness and meeting our beautiful dogs. We didn't meet mine, but we met Joey. Thank you, Joey, for being part of the famous Joey. Thank you for being part of our program. So that's us for now. So do check the link, the 28 days program, and we look forward to welcoming you in one of the programs that we are running. So take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.